I appreciate y'all's patience. I know some of y'all have been waiting for a little bit. We just wanted to give everybody a chance to get here. The reason we called this press conference today is because we have been able to close the chapter, close the book on what has been a very ugly chapter in the history of our county, being the Ralph Aaron child sex abuse case. Even though we've been able to close the court part of Ralph Aaron's misdeeds, the pain and suffering will still continue for the victims. We want to encourage everybody to continue to pray for them. Today, this afternoon, before Judge Frank McGuire, Mr. Aaron entered a guilty plea to 4 Class A felonies stemming from the charges that were brought by the Sheriff's Department against him, against various young men in our county. He pled to sodomy in the first degree and 3 counts of production of obscene matters involving children under the age of 17. Each of those counts, again, is a Class A felony. For each count, he received a life sentence. Each of these sentences will run consecutively to each other, which means that when one life sentence is up, the next one begins to run. The most crucial part of this guilty plea that everybody needs to understand is that because of the charges that he pled to, under the current laws of the state of Alabama, he is not eligible for parole. So in other words, Mr. Aaron has pled to life without parole. He will remain behind bars for the rest of his natural life. Because of his crimes, he will die in prison. The plea negotiations went as well as they did due to a combined work with the Sheriff's Department, the fantastic work that Investigator Wesley Snodgrass did in coordination with the Department of Human Resources as well as the Child Advocacy Center in our office. We all sat down with the victims' families. We discussed the case with them. We discussed the potential punishments with them, and the families discussed with us how they would like to see the case resolved. We were all on the same page. We came to this particular plea arrangement with the victims' families very early on in the process, and we have stuck on it throughout the last few months, and we were adamant that the case be resolved prior to this case having to be presented to a grand jury to avoid the children having to go and testify and to relive the acts that were perpetrated upon them. We have been able to do that. Mr. Aaron has pled guilty. He will be on his way to the Department of Corrections very shortly, and he'll never be back. With that, I'm going to open it up to Sheriff Meeks or Investigator Snodgrass if either one of y'all have something to say.
This is probably one of the worst crimes that I have seen in our county. I want to thank Investigator Wesley Snodgrass for the great work that he did on this case, the swiftness that he was able to put this case together. Also, I want to thank the victims of this crime and their families for coming forward, having the courage to come forward in this case, because had it have not been for them coming forward and giving us the information they did, then without a doubt this gentleman would have continued these crimes against other children in our county.
Sheriff, is there any ongoing investigations further into this as far as any other victims?
No.
Let me speak on that a little bit too. Part of the plea agreement before we went into it was that we wanted Mr. Aaron to tell us whether there were any other victims out there. He has assured us that there are not. What we have told him is that the investigation will continue. The investigation is mainly going to be headed at this point by the U.S. Attorney's Office. I met with them this week. There is a ton of computers and hard disk drives that still are being analyzed by forensics. If additional images are found, Mr. Aaron will not be prosecuted for them. However, if additional victims are found, Mr. Aaron will be prosecuted for those victims. So the investigation is not ongoing by the Sheriff's Department. However, the Sheriff's Department will be assisting and cooperating with them in that endeavor. This is the book that we're closing today is on our 4 victims. If there are any other victims out there, the U.S. attorneys have assured me that they will find them, and Mr. Aaron will be prosecuted for that.
What was his demeanor today? I mean, was he remorseful? Show any?
He spoke of being remorseful towards the end of the plea hearing. He had some tears as he said goodbye to his family. But other than that, he was very straightforward in his intent to plead guilty.
And he was charged with 56 counts and then 97 counts. Were those just a moot point at this point?
Pretty much. I mean, we're talking about a total of 153 counts overall. Not all of them were Class A and B. Some of them were Class C felonies. But the fact of the matter is that once you have the 4 consecutive life sentences, since he received life without parole, everything else is just overkill, essentially. And there's there's just no reason to have to go through that long of a plea agreement when you can shorten it up and simplify it. The simpler you make it, the more definite that you have chances of it standing up under further judicial scrutiny down the line. I mean, from experience, we know that at some point Mr. Aaron will probably file a post-conviction petition for relief or something along those lines. So by simplifying the matter and making sure he stays where he is, we were able to have a conviction that we can stand on, that we know will keep him behind bars forever.
Was there ever a time when you thought he actually might take this to trial, or was it?
Never. The one thing about Mr. Aaron, and this is one thing that Investigator Snodgrass did a wonderful job. We worked very closely together once the investigation began, not just with the Sheriff's Department, but with the Child Advocacy Center in Dothan and the Department of Human Resources. And one of the things that Investigator Snodgrass did a fantastic job of doing was getting into Mr. Aaron's mind. It was not a good place to be. I can assure you of that. But he was able to tell us about how Mr. Aaron did not want these children to have to testify in any manner. And so when I have an investigator that presents me with that information, then I can take it and I can use it to my advantage in trying to negotiate a case. One of the things that we didn't want them to do is we didn't want them to have to testify for a grand jury. We knew he didn't either, and so we put a deadline on. We put obviously a very stiff deal on him, a stiff sentence on him, and we held our ground and we stuck to our guns about not delaying it past our February grand jury term that starts on Monday.
Did he share why or what might have possessed him to do this in as far as his childhood or anything? That might be a question for the investigator.
To my knowledge, no. I mean, basically, as horrible as it sounds to us, the one word that did come out of his mouth was how he loved the boys. And it's one of those sick, demented feelings that none of us can even begin to understand. And so that's about as close as I can come to telling you why he did it. Fortunately, he's in a place now where he won't be able to do it again. Any other question?
Question for Investigator Snodgrass.
Yes, sir.
Are you satisfied with the outcome as the investigator in this case?
He'll die in prison. If that happens, with all respect for his family, and I'm sorry, with all my heart they've lost a husband and a father, then I will be satisfied.
Any other questions? All right, again, I thank y'all for being here. Appreciate it. Sorry y'all had to wait a little bit before we could talk.